everyone. I'm really excited today to interview Mr. Thomas, and we will be talking about lighting aspects in our architectural design and his work in research till date. So, Mr. Thomas, thanks a lot for your valuable time for this interview.
Thank you very much for having you there for the interview.
So, Mr. Thomas, could you tell about yourself, your background, and your work?
Yes, of course. So I'm based in Germany in the area of Cologne, 1 hour away there. And I'm studied architecture at the Darmstadt University of Technology, which is half an hour away from Frankfurt in Germany. And there was kind of very fortunate to have very good teachers. We have guest professors, which did courses on lighting, on photography. And I was a student research assistant at the Department for Building Technology. And there I had the first opportunities to get a little bit more into the field of architectural lighting to understand how to create lighting concepts. And after my studies, I did an internship at the luminaire manufacturer ERCO in their US office, very close to Manhattan. And there I added some kind of technical knowledge. So to understand the theory, the basic design concepts, and then adding the technical knowledge. And after that, I started at the ERCO headquarters in Germany. And there I'm working in the marketing department, and I'm involved in didactic communication. That means explaining lighting design in printed media, websites, social media, offering workshops. And then I added, and I was more interested in lighting design and more the theory and perception and the meaning. And for that reason, I started a doctoral thesis and worked on the topic on how light could be used for brand communication. And in addition, what I'm doing at the moment is teaching a lighting course at the Tongji University, and this starts very soon there as well. And like you mentioned, I'm a guest editor at ArchDaily for a column called Light Matters.
If you can name one book or experience which had a great impact on your career, what would that be?
It's a book from an American architect. His name is Henry Plummer, and he observed daylight. And I really love a lot of his books. He has published several of them. And I like his book, Masters of Light, where he describes a couple of architects like Alvar Aalto, Tadao Ando, and other great architects and how they dealt with light. And he created wonderful images, taking the right moments where you would find grazing light on concrete walls, where you would have diffuse light of Japanese architects. So it really sharpens your mind for daylight. And he has a wonderful way of describing lighting. So just to read it, you get a very clear and vivid understanding on the various aspects of daylight. And this is why I like this book so much.
I see. And how it shaped you in your career?
It helped me to understand light in a better way. With the different facets which are there, it's about the meaning, how it changed the atmosphere. It's not the technological approach. It's really about the atmosphere which it could generate. And this fascinates me. And I dived more into this field within my doctoral thesis. And I use these books for my lighting courses with universities, with students, sharing inspiration about how he's talking and writing about lighting design.
Yeah. And would you like to share about your favorite building till date, and what do you like the most about that building?
Of course, there are a lot of interesting buildings in the world from various architects, either older ones or new ones. So one building which is close by and is really remarkable is the Columba Museum by the Swiss architect Peter Zumthor. And he combined an old church, multiple old churches, because it's a very historical place. And you could find these different layers of history in there. And then he put on a museum with a very nice detailing of details from the wall to the ceiling to the floor. very nice work on materials, leather curtains, the rails, when you walk, for example, working a lot with bricks, and wonderful arrangement of windows where you could take a look at the Cologne Cathedral, for example, and thereby it's a very nice combination of daylight and artificial lighting with a very sophisticated concept to integrate the lighting in the overall architecture. That's the reason why I like the Columbia Museum very much and go there from time to time. And they have, in addition, very good exhibitions, very well curated exhibitions in this building.
I see. And what do you think how the travel and experience of different buildings impacted your architecture lighting philosophy?
It's just very enriching because you get many new ideas and it keeps you awake to see what is possible from a technical point, what kind of contrast that there is. Sometimes even if you encounter kind of challenges, you know what to avoid and how to make it in a different way and what it works in an urban scale or in a smaller scale. So it's really, traveling is something really very interesting for me for inspiration there.
Mm-hmm. And can you share any role model who had a huge impact in your career?
There were many people in my environment which became really some kind of interesting mentors for me. So first there is Klaus Jung-Mark, who is a former CEO of the aluminum manufacturer ERCO, and his way of talking and thinking about lighting, not about quantities, but really about the quality. And he just said light is a fourth dimension of architecture. And with this kind of thinking perspective, he opened a complete new world to, for me to understand lighting, to see the differences in different cultures, and to see the very individual approaches of how could art influence culture and technology. So this is a very interesting person. Then there's, for example, Susanne Seitinger, a former PhD student at the MIT, who had very interesting discussions about media facades and urban lighting. And in Germany, for example, there's Kai Schuster, a professor at the University of Applied Sciences in Darmstadt. He had a focus on architecture and psychology. So it's again about the atmosphere, and he helped me a lot from a doctoral thesis about the interdisciplinary view and how to approach such a complex topic if you have visual aspects, technical aspects, psychological aspects, marketing aspects, and how to bring this really together. So these three people which were kind of influential for my way of thinking in my professional environment.
Mm-hmm. And what was the biggest challenge in your doctoral thesis?
Well, the biggest challenge in my doctoral thesis was actually that it was interdisciplinary, because it has something to do, when I worked on the topic lighting for brand communication, it has first lighting, there's a technical part, there's design part, and then there's an aspect of marketing, there's branding. And it's kind of difficult to find the right mentors for this kind of thesis, because they are specialists in their own fields, but they sometimes hesitate to give comments for marketing. And the marketing person is not so much familiar with lighting design, and he can just talk about his field. But bringing everything together, this was really a challenge. And there, Kai Schuster helped me a lot and supported me in the way to approach these kind of topics and to discuss all of this, and not just putting a very narrow technical view to the thesis.
Could you tell about your publication and projects?
Yes, for sure. So one project, one publication is a book, Light Perspectives, which was created within ERCO. I collaborated with my colleague Martin Krauter, and we talked about architectural lighting. And it was quite a challenge to find the right concept, because there's so many books already in the market on architectural lighting, some more technical, and each has its own focus. And our idea was to think that there are always kind of two dimensions. So it's bright and dark. Both worlds are kind of okay, and you have to balance them in the right way. For the one project, it could be brighter, the other is more maybe darker, but each atmosphere has its own qualities, or warm and cold, for example. And then we added a spatial dimension, talking about white spaces, closed spaces, vertical spaces, horizontal surfaces in the architecture, how you would link them. And then there was a conceptual dimension about thinking architecture versus theater. How do you balance these kinds of aspects? There's a function and there's drama in some specific applications. And all these three dimensions were put together. So this was the book Light Perspectives. Later on, I was thinking more about an urban dimension in collaboration with Davina Jackson as an editor. I had the opportunity to contribute to the book SuperLux, where I wrote a chapter about media facades, their role for branding, and how it influenced the urban design. And of course, like you mentioned, writing on a regular basis for ArchDaily with various aspects about sustainability, about daylight. Sometimes it's focused on architects like Norman Foster, Zaha Hadid, Corbusier, Tadao Ando. And sometimes I'm taking a look more on technical aspects like, for example, drones. How could drone symphonies in the air at the night create new images to avoid, for example, fireworks, or to come up with new scenographies? Or maybe how satellite images could help us to understand urban lighting and light pollution in a better way. And then if I'm more interested in details, I'm going into publications for journal papers like about light and semiotics to understand and to explain the meaning of lighting. So this is a brief overview of my various publications I did.
That when did you decide that you should write a book about it, and how much time you took for that?
It was more opening opportunities. ERCO had an anniversary, the 75th anniversary, and they were looking for future-orientated book and not to write about the history of the company, but more to give, to create a study book for designers so that they benefit in the long term about this book. And this was one opportunity. The other time, Davina Jackson approached me because she heard about my studies about media facades, and then this is getting more involved and working on a collaboration of projects. It's more difficult to start your own project, your own individual book project, which might hopefully become successful.
I see. And what was the duration for in order to write all the content for this book?
So the book Light Perspectives, it took about 2.5 years, and it was a very intense process for starting the concept, the chapters, to create them, a structure within the chapters. And then it was about the detailing. It was about the visuals, where we collaborated with a very knowledgeable CGI specialist, Axel Gross, based in Berlin, to find the right visual language, which is long lasting. So if you even take a look now after almost 10 years at this book, it should be still attractive. And this is one quality. And Mariko Takagi, a graphic designer, was in charge of the graphic designer. And she did a very excellent work on a very good layout for the complete book there, for a timeless experience. And it should be a book which is within the corporate design of the company. So it has to fulfill different requirements to continue a line of books from the ERCO company, and then being very interesting and attractive for learning light and to understand the different chapters.
Mr. Thomas, can you share what were the challenges faced by you in your career, and how did you resolve it?
Yes, one challenge was really the book Light Perspectives, to have so many ideas and really to reduce it and to discuss with colleagues what should be the key point of a specific chapter, and then discussing this in an editorial board with other people who have a specific view about the message of a chapter, then discussing this with lighting specialists, with lighting technology specialists to figuring out and to bring this together in a very good way that people who are not so familiar with lighting design could understand this, and thinking about graphics, a graphical style which makes it easy to understand, working with some kind of pictograms, very reduced graphics to make it easy that you go flip through the book and you find the right chapter, the right information there. And so this was solved by collaboration. And yes, this was a major challenge within my professional career working on this book there.
Mm-hmm. I see. And when you start your project or in your past work, what intention do you set for that? And what do you expect the readers to learn from those work?
It should be some kind of inspiration in a very wide field to get an understanding how light could be, for example, the fourth dimension of architecture, to think how you could interpret architecture in different ways with lighting, that there are many ways, either if you have a focused light or a very diffuse light or a combination of this, thinking in different scenarios from the morning to the evening, and thereby creating better quality to architecture and giving them some insights about how they could contribute to a very sustainable solution. So it's an awareness in addition for different technological developments which are on the market, to keep track of them, to understand how they have an effect on the actual lighting design in a city when you create a specific lighting in a building, and the effect vice versa there. And showing the combination of daylight and illumination. So very often the one engineer just maybe focuses on illumination, but then he forgot that architecturally starts with daylight in the beginning. And very often in the universities, students don't find so much time to get information about how you use daylight as an element to render architecture in a beautiful way, so that you could benefit in an interior space from this.
Yeah. And what is one thing that upsets you about the way people treat architectural lighting in their design?
I think very often lighting design is discussed just in quantities, not in the quality of light. So there are many regulations in the lighting world where you need to fulfill specific standards. For example, for office lighting, we're discussing 500 lux on the desktop for working. But we see those guidelines were written in a time where we worked on paper files, for example. Today we have luminous screens, and we can even switch off the lighting and could actually work with our luminous keyboard, have our vertical screen there. And so we nearly read to rethink this kind of way. And I think for the growing sustainability discussion, this is a really intense challenge to solve this, how we could work on more efficient lighting solutions for our current office environment, which has self-luminous screens and does not really need conventional desktop lighting, which such an amount of light there anymore. So this is something what I would like to discuss, and which I address very often in workshops and lectures.
To you, what are the emerging trends in architectural lighting?
There are trends on different levels. The one is definitely technology, LED technology getting more efficient. The lifetime is very long, but it's not only the LED, it's how it's integrated into a network. And I think this is where you see the most intense developments, that you have software apps where you bring a lot of fixtures together which could talk to each other and at least sending data there, and you can communicate there a lot. And this makes it easier to install an existing building, new infrastructure, for example. The other one is, of course, a trend, sustainability, to use daylight in a smart way. Very often we see skyscrapers which have so much glass out there, and people have problems with glare. The building is heating up with the sunlight, especially if you look to Middle East. There are a lot of glass sculptures, they just warm up. And the question is there something more sustainable from a holistic point of view? And it's a discussion about dark sky, avoiding light pollution there, especially for urban lighting, to concentrate the lighting where you actually need it. And we have today a very sophisticated system of automotive lighting, and thereby the former street lighting does not need to be so powerful very often. So these are opportunities where you could work on smarter solutions and reduce the overall light levels there. And another trend is, from a design point, things get smaller. Luminaires get smaller and they're very powerful. And this is an opportunity for architects, interior designers, to integrate it into the architecture in very sophisticated ways. And so I think these are the main trends of technology, sustainability, and design with miniaturization.
Could you share what are the methods do you use to fuel your creativity? In what ways do you blend technical and creative aspects of your work?
So I would just recommend openness, looking around, following trends, and maybe not only in the pure field of architecture. Sometimes it could be looking to sports, where you would see a luminous basketball field. It turns into a dynamic stage due to projections, and you could transfer this concept to buildings, for example, to exhibition designs. Or you could look to the health sector today, where you see with the corona pandemics that there are symbolic illuminations of buildings, or there are concerts on balconies with flashing lights from neighbors. And there you could think, how do you create on a very basic levels, you connect people together and create a new event, raising awareness and saying gratitude, for example, to your neighbors and to your healthcare workers in the environment. So it's really being open, following trends, developments, discussions, TED Talks, and ArchDaily is a wonderful platform to keep track of all the aspects on an urban level and on material details there, and software, for example, or book recommendations. It's just wonderful. Collaboration is really very important. At ERCO, it's really on a regular basis meeting with graphic designers to find the right language of visuals. For example, Simone Heinzer is an excellent designer who knows how people look there, what they would like to understand, and how you should create a clear speaking information graphics, for example. And then there's ongoing discussions with our product designers like Henk Koscher, for example, to understand the system of the design, the long-term roadmap, and how it integrates there. And then from time to time, it's dialogues with lighting designers like Volker von Kardorf or other designers to understand their needs for a specific situation, and sharing trends and what can one contribute there as a technical answer, for example, or as a design solution. And in the academic field, it's the same, reaching out to experts, for example, for my current studies about media facades in China. Based in Europe or in Germany here, I can't understand all the details there and the history. So for that reason, I interviewed many people from Asia to understand how they would evaluate a specific situation. And then they have their internal view. And then, of course, there might be some restriction in China. So you need to speak to people outside China, but they don't have sometimes not a good understanding about China. So you need to mix both views there to come up with an overall solution about what the current trends are and how it could influence our environment.
My next question is, what is the best advice you have received till date, and what advice would you give to your past self or students and architects?
So I have two people in mind which gave interesting advices to me. So the one teacher is from my school, Dr. Hermann, who was a very notable person about German, then philosophy, religion. And he always said, please ask questions to understand and to see the larger image there, and to evaluate the relevance there, and check the sources if they are reliable. And I think this is really a crucial point which I took there for my research. And then there's the professor from our architecture faculty, Petzinker, based in Düsseldorf, and he said when I studied, think about 10 alternatives for a concept. Select the best one, and then go for details, create 10 details for a solution, pick out the best one, and then go on. So thinking about alternatives and really thinking is one or the other better, or maybe a combination of two alternatives. And so this strategy was really helpful for me for writing books, for design issues, and solving other questions there.
What is one thing you would do first after the pandemic ends?
I think it's going out and visiting interesting exhibitions. So going out to museums, theater performances. So this would be something I really miss. And of course, traveling is something which I miss there as well.
Which city would you recommend student or professional to travel if they want to get inspired from architectural lighting?
For architectural lighting, oh, that's a very good question. There are so many cities. So, innovative concepts come very often maybe in larger cities. It could be even in smaller cities. And it's just looking around for interesting solution. So it could be Hamburg, it could be Berlin, it could be New York, it could be Sydney, for example. So each city has its own good designs there. And there are lighting associations available. You can look for specific designers where they realize something and pick out a very interesting project. From time to time, you will find lighting design awards, take a look at them, and then visit them, maybe go to London. They have regularly lighting competitions, and you will find a lot of very good lighting solutions, for example, in London as well.
Can you recommend any conference in architectural lighting which would be really useful?
Lighting conferences, yes, there was recently one in the Netherlands, Professional Lighting Design Convention, and the American Lighting Association, ILD, they have their conferences called Enlighten Europe, Enlighten America. So they're at the moment canceled, but those conferences are really I'm looking for. Or the Media Architecture Biennale is something when it comes to media facades. So these are the kind of interesting conferences there. And in addition, there's some in Mexico there as well, South America, Australia, and Asia there as well. So, but these were just some main conferences.
You mentioned about inspiration and working with artists from different fields apart from architecture and lighting. Can you share which artist work you find inspiring?
So one of my favorites when it comes to light art is James Turrell. He is a great person working on perception of light with a very sophisticated, slow-moving daylight, sometimes combining there with electrical lighting. Of course, his major piece is the Rodin Crater, an ongoing project. And I was fortunate to visit this one time with a student group and with a teacher from the Düsseldorf University, Eibelshäuser, with a student field trip, which was just incredible to see this space, his daylight openings, how he works with the sunset. So this is just a great person. Another one is Robert Wilson in theater, working magically with stage lighting. So this is just beautiful and really enjoy his place there. Or it could be thinking about movement and dance. The Netherlands Dance Theater is creating wonderful performances with excellent lighting design there as well.
What's coming next for you?
Yes, the lighting course which starts at the Wuppertal University. This is really very interesting to have it now in an e-learning version, where I'm looking forward to take a look at different aspects about how you talk about lighting, how you visualize lighting, to create lighting concepts, to analyze current trends, for example, like media facade design in China, and creating models and mock-ups of daylight solutions. So this is a course which I'm offering, which starts next week. And then I'm still working on my analysis about media facades in China, where you see a large group of media facets working together, creating some kind of symphony in many different cities there. And as a new phenomenon within a city. So for example, in New York, you have New York Times Square. It's very commercial, whereas in China, you have a storytelling in a different way with your local region environment there. So it's a different way of storytelling, very often really without any commercials. So that's a kind of new phenomenon.
Can our viewers follow you?
Check out what I'm thinking. I publish this on ArchDaily. So when you take a look at the column Light Matters within ArchDaily, then you will keep track of my ideas and thoughts.